Morning, Congress. Could you take your seats? Thank you. Morning, colleagues. Can I ask you to take your seats and settle in? We're back. Welcome back to day 2 of the 128th Congress. Can I remind the delegates of the following? Delegates are encouraged to use the hashtag STUC25 when posting on socials. Daily Congress sessions are being recorded and will be available at the end of each day on the STUC YouTube channel. Delegates can follow the live discussions on Congress on the STUC website. Visit Congress 2025 page and follow the link. Congress, can I invite Willie Docherty, Chair of the Standing Orders Committee, to move the third Standing Orders report. Willie, thank you. Colleagues, anyone in the sound from the centre that can activate the mic just below the rostrum? Alan, where are you?
Sorry.
Willie, thank you for doing the mic test for me. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Willie Docherty, Chair of the Standing Orders Committee, for the 4th or 5th time presenting the third Standing Orders report. Congress, we received 14 emergency motions yesterday, of which 10 are in order and will be scheduled for debate. 2 were deemed not competent and 2 we are currently working to establish competency. An emergency motions booklet was issued to delegation leaders following Congress yesterday and will be handed out by tellers this morning. I would also draw your attention to the updated order of business, which was again shared with delegation leaders following Congress yesterday and will be distributed by tellers. It's important that this order of business is now used, as it contains the following changes to the order of business, but it doesn't really, because in your new order of business, it tells you that emergency motion 10, Dundee University, and emergency motion 7, civil service jobs, were scheduled for debate this morning. That has now been changed, and they will be scheduled for debate after lunch this afternoon. Composite G, social care, has been withdrawn and will now revert to the original motions. Emergency motion 3, rest breaks in Scottish Ambulance Service, has been scheduled for debate this afternoon. Can I ask that all the organisations involved in the debate on Composite P Palestine meet with the Standing Orders Committee in the Artists Lounge at 9:20 this morning? The organisations listed in the composite are PCS, ASLEF, NUJ, Aberdeen Trades Council, Midlothian Trades Council, Dundee Trades Council, and Glasgow Trades Council. And with that, I move the third Standing Orders report.
Thanks very much, Willie, and thank you for your perseverance and the mic testing throughout the hall. Thank you. Colleagues, I'm delighted to welcome Anna Sawa, the leader of the Scottish Labour Party, and we start this morning's discussion with an invitation to Anna's to address Congress. Annas, you're very welcome. I just hope the mic is working and you're welcome to make your contribution.
Is it? Great. Conference, thank you so much. I should start by saying thank you to Willie for being the mic tester for us this morning. Thank you so much, Willie. Friends, it's a pleasure to be here, but we do meet in very difficult global times. And before I start my broader comments about what's happening here in Scotland and the UK, I just wanted to put on record what I know is the fundamental solidarity and support that the people across our trade union movement want to send to all those that are suffering at the hands of inequality, injustice or war in any other part of the world, whether that is those struggling in Gaza and the humanitarian catastrophe that continues and the ongoing bloodshed from a regime led by Benjamin Netanyahu that doesn't seem to understand or respect international law, or whether it be those suffering in Ukraine at the hands of another despot in the name of Vladimir Putin, or indeed those that are suffering in the ongoing violence in Sudan and the many, many other places where there are heightened tensions and the risk of war, for example, in South Asia, where we continue around the globe to call for ceasefires, to call for an end to violence, for the free flow of humanitarian aid, and for people to live in peace, dignity and security, regardless of their nationality, regardless of their faith, and regardless of their background. That is a fundamental labour principle, a fundamental trade union principle, where yes, of course, we care about the rights of our citizens here at home, but we are an internationalist movement that also wants to spread the values of fairness, decency and integrity right across our globe. Conference, thank you for having me here today. For several years now, it's been my privilege to address the STUC conference here in the great city of Dundee as the leader of the Scottish Labour Party. But for all the years I've been coming here, this year is slightly different because it is the first time and the first year I've addressed this conference where the Tories are nowhere to be seen, finally booted out of power, and finally where they belong in the fringes of our politics. And conference, that's a success, not just of a Labour Party, that is a broader success of working people across the country and the broader trade union movement. It's your success, you should own it, the fact that the Tories are no more and the Labour movement has now got key voices and key positions across our country. But just think about what we had to get rid of last year. Because I think so often it's easy to forget the level of chaos and carnage that was confronting our country. Remember Liz Truss? Gone. Priti Patel? Gone. Lord David Cameron, the architect of austerity? Gone. That dangerous clown Boris Johnson? Gone. And Rishi Sunak? Probably somewhere in California as we speak. The conference, the working people and the trade union of our country did it. They won that election and they sent the Tories packing and have locked them out of power. But let's just think about why that was so important. Because since 2010, the Tories waged war on working people and the trade union movement. They made the poorest in our society pay the biggest price of the global financial crash caused by the big banks. Whilst they bailed out their friends in the city, they left our communities across Scotland and across the UK decimated. They privatised service after service, leaving the people of our country without a stake in how our country is run. They lined their own pockets and those of their friends with dodgy deals on PPE in the midst of a global pandemic, whilst those on the front line were risking their lives to protect our citizens. Members of these trade union movements risking their lives to fend for others. And whilst they went into battle against this trade union movement, using all their powers to try and muzzle our movement with more draconian legislation, but what happened? Our trade union movement never gave up. They kept fighting, and finally, after 14 years, we were able to get rid of a Tory government that what it felt like it was doing was punching down working people over the last 14 years. So as I say, David Cameron's austerity, to Boris Johnson's cronyism, to Liz Truss's mini-budget, they led a government by the few, for the few, and only for a few. And they left working people to pick up the pieces of their chaotic reign again and again. So for all the challenges that understandably people will want to pose to any government, especially a Labour government of our own, we should never forget what we had to get rid of, and we should never forget of the shower that came before. Because it's right that a trade union movement and a Labour movement continues to press a UK Labour government for more, to go faster, to go further. That is what the trade union movement should always do, is represent its people and fight for the best deal for its people. But actually kicking the Tories out of power and out of the corridors of power was in itself hugely important. But the scale of the challenge facing our country is huge, and we've only started that hard work of rebuilding the UK, and there's still work to do to rebuild Scotland too. And everyone knows in this room how big a task that is. But despite that, Labour has got to work to fix almost a decade and a half of Tory misrule. Now, again, not everyone in this room will agree with every action of a Labour government, but people in this room will understand that you only get to make different decisions if you have a Labour government. And of course, people in this room have a duty to hold a Labour government to account, but they also have a duty to work with a Labour government to make sure they're advancing the cause of working people, and that is the fundamental role of our trade union movement. And that's what you do every day. You represent the best of Scotland, you represent the best of working people in Scotland, and you fight for the best deal possible for the working people of Scotland. But let's also be clear about some of the change that's only possible because we now have a UK Labour government. A record increase to the minimum wage, putting more money in workers' pockets, only possible because this Labour movement helped deliver a Labour government. Ending the scandal of fire and rehire, only possible because this Labour movement helped elect a Labour government. Sick pay and maternity pay leave guaranteed, from day one, only possible because we have a Labour government. Banning exploitative zero-hour contracts, only possible because we have a Labour government. Saving the future of British Steel, only possible because we have a Labour government. £200 million to secure the future of Grangemouth, with still lots more work to do, only possible because we have a Labour government. Ending austerity with record investment in our public services, only possible because we have a Labour government. And the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation, only possible because we have a Labour government. Conference, all of this would have been unthinkable under the Tories, and this is only possible because this Labour movement helped shape that programme, that new deal for working people, and helped deliver a Labour government. And as I say, the trade union movement will always do its job, which is to hold those in positions of power to account and stand up for the workers across the country. But the fact of the matter is this, that working people will always be better off under Labour, because Labour is the party of work and the party of workers, it always has been, and it always will be. And conference, the need for a politics that delivers for the people of Scotland could not be clearer too. Last summer across the UK, we saw the result of 14 years of damage to our communities. In town after town, protests turned to riots. The most vulnerable in our society, refugees, migrants, the homeless, minorities were targeted, homes were smashed, places of worship defiled, and communities left in shock. And a Labour government, just imagine how the difference it would have been if that was Rishi Sunak trying to confront those riots, and the contrast of a Labour government instead, which should shoulder to shoulder with our police forces and those groups under threat and call those out who spread violence and bigotry. And now we see across the UK and in Scotland the rise of the politics of division, embodied by the ultimate snake oil salesman and easy answer politician Nigel Farage and Reform UK. And conference, we shouldn't sit in some kind of comfortable bubble here in Scotland thinking that somehow we're immune to the politics of division, or the politics of the far right, or indeed the politics of Reform UK. And as Ros, your General Secretary, said at a summit we attended just last week, there can be no complacency in Scotland when it comes to the rise of division and polarisation. And that's why I attended the summit last week. It's why Ros attended too, because we had to demonstrate that we will not be complacent, that we will stand up and fight for working people, and we will make sure that we address the fundamental underlying challenges that push people to reactionary politics. But the truth is, I don't believe John Swinney and the Scottish Government get it. I genuinely don't believe it. I don't think they understand what everyone in this room instinctively understands and what Ros instinctively made the case for last week. And that is that the rise of reactionary and divisive politics is absolutely intrinsically linked to the daily failure of those in power here to deliver for the people of our country. Because it's easy to think that people and politics is somehow different in Scotland, when in actual fact, politics, people don't think it works for them. Society, I don't think they think it works for them. Government, I don't think people think it works for them. Public services, I don't think people think it works for them. And that's why they're pushed to the politics of division and to reactionary forces. So just imagine if you're someone stuck in pain on an NHS waiting list, waiting months for treatment. You're not going to think the politics works for you. Just imagine if you're one of those families of one of those 10,000 children stuck in temporary accommodation that can't find a home to call your own. You're not going to think politics works for you. Imagine you're one of the tens of thousands of people who can't find good and secure work. You're not going to think that politics or government works for you. Or you're one of the ones that sees your children not feeling safe at school, or you're a teacher that doesn't feel safe at school. You're not going to think that politics or government works for you. Or one of those people that are in a community that's blighted by antisocial behaviour or crime, or where there's no police to be seen. You're not going to believe that politics or government works for you. And until we address that fundamental challenge, we will not tackle divisive politics in our society. And if we don't accept that the root cause of so many of the challenges is failures of a Scottish Government, then we will fail to deliver for the people of Scotland. We have to end the failure to support our public services, the failure to tackle inequality, and the failure, ultimately, to make life better for the people that politics is supposed to serve. The best way to stop people going to the politics of division and far right is for actually governments to improve people's lives. That is the fundamental challenge facing us. And that, for me, is the fundamental task for any Scottish Government, to make life better for working Scots. But after nearly 2 decades in charge, the SNP have lost their way. And take the example of Scotland's manufacturing and industrial sector. Our nation was once the workshop of the world, but now our industry and communities that it served have been left behind. And it's not just that the Scottish Government hasn't got an industrial strategy, it seems at times that they are actively undermining Scottish industry. On their watch, we've had a new bridge built, but with Chinese steel. Scores of new wind turbines going up across our country, but they're being imported from other parts of the globe, while Scottish workers miss out. New ferries not being built in Scotland, but being built in Turkey and Poland. And Scotland's natural resources and seabed flogged off on the cheap to foreign multinationals rather than us having a stake here at home. And while this is all happening, they turned a blind eye to the running down of the Grangemouth refinery, and they used public money to sell the Lochaber smelter and DL Steel off to a dodgy businessman with a score of failed projects in his wake. And what's the result? Fewer jobs for Scotland, fewer investment in Scotland, lower growth in Scotland, and jobs going elsewhere, our steel industry moribund and now under challenge. Honestly, conference, exporting jobs, importing steel, handing over contracts abroad, industries moving elsewhere, I honestly question sometimes about what kind of nationalists they actually are. Because the fact is that after 18 years, if they had any good ideas about how to strengthen industry and deliver for workers, they would have done it by now. And that's why we do need a new direction in Scotland too. And that's why I will put the future of Scottish industry and manufacturing at the heart of Scottish Labour's campaign in 2026. Because yes, we had to get rid of a Tory government. Yes, we have to continue to push a UK Labour government to go further and faster. But we can't pretend that decisions made here in Scotland don't impact on people's lives too. And here in Scotland, we are being held back by a tired SNP government that's run out of steam. So the job for change is only just started and only half done in many ways, and it falls to Scottish Labour to complete that job with your support and partnership in the coming Scottish Parliament election. And at that election, the choice will be clear. A Scottish Labour government will work with our trade union movement to revive our industries, prioritise manufacturing jobs and investment for Scottish firms and Scottish workers. We will overhaul our education system to deliver a clear pathway to well-paid, unionised industrial jobs to get our economy moving and provide the industrial base we need. We will use the power of government to work with businesses and unions to strengthen supply chains to make sure we can make and deliver more of what we need here in Scotland. And we will put high-skill, high-pay, unionised jobs for workers here in Scotland first. With a Scottish Labour government, Scottish workers will no longer miss out on the jobs and investment they need and deserve. That investment, those contracts will be here at home. That is the new direction we will deliver for Scotland. Now, I know John Swinney, who you heard from yesterday, will want to make the election next year a choice between a UK government and a Scottish government. But the reality is people in this room know that the truth is that this election next year is too important for that and actually is a different choice. Because fundamentally the election next year is going to be about many issues, but one fundamental issue is going to be about our National Health Service. After 18 years of the SNP, we now have 1 in 6 Scots stuck on an NHS waiting list. There was one case just yesterday where a young person was found to have waited 6 years to start their mental health treatment. Thousands in our country are forced into the arms of private medicine, undermining the very principles of our NHS. 40% of the hip and knee replacements that now happen in Scotland are happening in the private sector. People remortgaging their homes, borrowing money from friends, or actually cashing in their pensions in order to get a hip and knee replacement because they cannot afford to wait in pain on an NHS waiting list. And the people in this room who work and represent the workers in the NHS on the front line know that our NHS has to be fixed, and we have to make sure it's fit for the future so it can save lives and safeguard the service for the future. But the people in this room also know, especially those who work in our schools and our colleges, that it's also about our skills system. Because as we speak, attainment is falling. Children with additional support needs are being failed by cuts. Whilst the number of assisted support needs requirements have increased, the actual number of assisted support need teachers has fallen considerably. People who live in many communities will know that too often now, knives are being brought into schools and staff and pupils fear for their lives. That's why, of course, the election will be about our NHS. Of course, it will be about Scotland's manufacturing capacity. Of course, it it'll be about our skill system, but it also fundamentally will be about the safety and security of our children and the education of our children so they have the opportunity to thrive once again. But also there will be many local government workers in this room today who will know that the future of our communities is also fundamentally a choice come the election next year. Because after years of SNP cuts and austerity, our villages, our towns, our cities are at breaking point. Underinvestment has carved out the heart of so many of our communities, with local businesses and residents left to pay the price. And that's why that election will also be about the future of our communities and making our public spaces thrive once again. Conference, that's the future and the choice that we have. Fixing our NHS, supporting our young people, ending years of cuts and underinvestment in our communities, that's what we'll be campaigning for. That's the new direction we have to build for Scotland. And let me just make one final commitment before I leave the stage. And that is, I was really proud that the trade union movement and the broader Labour movement helped develop our manifesto for the election last year. And I'm really proud that we will have key trade unionists at the heart of developing our programme for change for next year's election too. Because I don't want to just have conversations with our Labour and trade union movement that is at the Scottish Labour Unions meetings, or indeed at the Scottish Executive Committee meetings, or indeed at STUC meetings, or indeed at STUC conference. I want to have trade unionist voices helping develop the programme, helping to road test the programme, helping to deliver the programme, and have trade unionists at the heart of a future Scottish Labour government here in Scotland, working people, making decisions, improving the lives of people in Scotland, making our country a fairer, safer, more prosperous nation where the working people of our country are at the heart of everything we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anis, and please accept this token of our appreciation for addressing Congress this morning. Thank you. Congress, we will now continue the morning session debating motions from Section 5 of the Agenda, Education and Lifelong Learning. I now call on Motion 28, Implementing the Rights of Children and Workers, and I invite EIS to move the motion. Andrea, welcome.
Thank you, President. Comrades, Andrea Bradley moving motion 28 on behalf of the EIS. The conclusion of yesterday's debate on the existential threats posed by the far right saw this Congress rightly united in our determination to stand up, stand together and defend all of our rights that come under threat from far-right political extremism. Free speech is a fundamental pillar of democracy and we need to guard it or we lose debate, scrutiny and accountability. We all understand the axiomatic role of education for democracy and for peace, for the protection and realisation of rights, just as the countries of the United Nations did in the aftermath of the second of two brutal world wars and the genocides and other atrocities committed at the hands of the Nazis. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was born out of the collective conviction that never again would the ravages of fascism be wreaked upon humanity with all its catastrophic consequences. Post-war, the countries of the United Nations understood that high-functioning democracies don't go to war with one another, don't slaughter their own citizens, don't invade and occupy other nations, other human beings, and then kill them in their millions. High-functioning democracies ensure that their citizens are well-educated, able to think critically, to detect bias and misinformation, and to challenge it, to participate in democratic processes in an informed way. They ensure that all citizens have equal opportunities to receive an education regardless of gender, social class, ethnicity, and high-functioning democracies enable and respect free speech. They uphold human rights and human beings flourish because of it. They have bread and they have roses and they have books too. 80 years on from the end of the Second World War, the lessons that seem to have been learned are being forgotten, ignored even at home with the dismantling of the welfare state and globally where we see a dearth of democracy. Those of us in here who know our history know that unless we act as a movement to defend our hard-won rights, the young people of today will pay the price for decades to come. The right to education globally is mission critical for the trade union movement. For example, today in Afghanistan, girls are prohibited from receiving secondary schooling because the Afghan government understands the power of education in respect of the realisation of rights and doesn't want girls to have any. No one raises an eyebrow when workers in Scotland or the wider UK speak out about the Taliban government's breaches of human rights. Today in Palestine, schools, colleges and universities are being deliberately targeted and destroyed, razed to the ground, institution upon institution, in breach of international law because the Israeli government wants to destroy the lives of the Palestinian people today and to stunt their ability to educate their young people to rebuild the nation for the future. NGOs have a critical role in this rebuild, but their efforts are being calculatedly thwarted with false allegations of terrorist links and the deliberate killings of NGO staff. Here in Scotland and the wider UK, the tentacles of the Israeli government lobby are spread so widely that to express an opinion about their atrocities carries significant risk of being accused of anti-Semitism with associated risks to reputation and even to employment. Free and critical speech on the actions of the Israeli government that breach international law shouldn't be a matter of contention in any functioning democracy. After what history's taught us, we can't equivocate on the right to free speech or the right to education. These are the bedrock of our democracy, and that's why we need to take the actions that are listed in this motion to ensure that our citizens and our communities are essentially equipped and enabled to defend democracy and reject fascism. Stand up for our fundamental rights, our children's rights, stand up for democracy and peace, and please support the motion. No passaran.
Thanks, Andrea. Can I now call on the seconder of the motion? Thank you.
Good morning, President, and good morning, Congress. Seamus Searson of the Scottish Secondary Teachers Association. Do not underestimate the challenge ahead of us all, as workers, trade unionists, parents and communities. Freedoms many of us take for granted are all under threat. Extremism, misinformation, lack of respect, lack of understanding and the rejection of responsibility. All of us, including those who work in the public sector, must have the freedom of speech and opinion without the threat of censure or threats to their jobs. This is important as we all need to work together to challenge the threats that still undermine our democracy. This is most important in the battle for our young people's hearts and minds. Teachers need the support from parents, local communities, local councils and government to challenge these threats. The STUC political education programme that we asked for will help us in this battle. We need the space to explain, reason and educate our young people and instill understanding, respect and responsibility. There is a big fight ahead of us all. We need to stand together and make sure we win this battle. Thank you.
Thanks, Seamus. I now call on any other supporting or opposing speakers in the debate. Thank you.
Good morning, Congress. My name is Leah Budjoe, and I am representing the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy. I am a first-time delegate and a first-time speaker. The Chartered Society of Physiotherapy are in support of this motion. Education is a basic human right that can raise individuals out of poverty, level inequalities, and ensure sustainable development. The World Health Organization recognizes that healthcare workers are the beating part of every health system, and the majority of these workers, 70%, are women. 90% of the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy members are also women, and if you look in this Congress program, the majority of healthcare unions have women membership above 70%. Global demand for healthcare workers is rising. If women and girls can't participate in education, then we don't have a future workforce. This is a worldwide issue that without action will have a detrimental effect in the future that could impact on us all. We need to support the right of education for women and girls to maintain our vital services. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Any other speakers in the debate? Thanks, colleagues. That was motion 28, implementing the rights of children and workers. Please note that the General Council recommends support. I will now go to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Motion 28, implementing the rights of children and workers, is carried. I now call amended motion 30, funding quality education in Scotland, and I invite EIS to move the amended motion. Thank you, colleague.
President, comrades, Alan Crosby, EIS President, moving motion 30 and still reeling in disbelief that a First Minister can come and speak to STUC about tackling the far right, building a sustainable and resilient economy, and ending child poverty without once mentioning schools or colleges or teachers or lecturers. But maybe I shouldn't be surprised that the First Minister wants to avoid talking about education, given the 18 years of broken manifesto promises that we've had. In 2007, they said, we will reduce class sizes in primary 1, 2 and 3 to 18. Promise broken. In 2011, that became, we will support progressive reductions in class sizes in the youngest years. Promise broken. In 2021, they thought it best just not to mention class sizes at all. And instead we will recruit at least 3,500 additional teachers and reduce teachers' daily contact time by 1.5 hours per week. Promises so far broken. Instead of 3,500 extra teachers, we have a promise simply to maintain teacher numbers at 2023 levels. Instead of seizing the opportunity to reduce class sizes during primary school rolls falling, we continue to have some of the largest class sizes in the OECD. And instead of the promised cuts to contact hours, Scottish teachers have the 4th highest in the world, all while the government and COSLA dither and delay. That lack of progress and that lack of clarity has driven us on the teachers' side to declare a dispute and to threaten a consultative ballot. That dispute and that threat are absolutely necessary, and the EIS's campaigning work over the past 2 years since the launch of our Stand Up for Quality Education campaign has been absolutely necessary, because the truth is that 18 years of this government and 15 years of UK government austerity have brought the Scottish education system to a state of crisis, all caused by devastating and ongoing cuts. Speakers to motions 33 and 34 will outline more details of that crisis, but let me focus for a moment just on one group of teachers in particular, our newest teachers, mainly, of course, our youngest teachers, and mainly young women. Far too many of these members have been trapped in the precarity of temporary contracts for several years, shunted from school to school every August, from one temporary post to another, with no hope of a permanent job in sight. They can't get mortgages. They can't afford to start families. They feel they were conned into the teaching profession on the promise of a stable and rewarding career, but the reality has been a downward spiral of insecurity, instability, and mental ill health. As one sister put it to me recently, I feel devalued and disposable. Devalued and disposable, colleagues, that is what is happening to our teachers. Job security is a central plank of the Fair Work Convention's principles, but the Scottish Government's ambitions to make this country a leading fair work nation in this year are an absolute joke when we see how this group of teachers are being treated, and when we see so many of their colleagues who do have permanent jobs burning out with stress-related illnesses. Teachers are working 11 hours a week over their contract, unpaid labour that amounts to every 3 teachers doing the work of 4. With 40% now of pupils having additional support needs, the system is crying out for thousands of additional permanent teachers, thousands more support staff, and the millions of pounds of investment that will be required to pay for those staff. And where will those millions come from? Well, with the UK Labour Party imposing a new version of austerity and willfully refusing to see the necessity and urgency of wealth taxes, the money has to come from this Scottish Government having the courage to implement the tax reforms that the STUC has been calling for since the end of 2022. Comrades, to rescue the system from crisis, we need promises to be kept, we need tax justice to invest in preventative spending, and we need genuine, authentic, fair work for all education workers. Comrades, I move solidarity.
Thank you, Delegate. Can I now call on the GMB to second the amended motion? Thank you.
Good morning, Congress. Good morning, delegates. Karen Dennis, GMB, Scotland, seconding motion 30. Congress, the situation in Scottish schools is dire. Every day school support staff are turning up, not worried that they will be abused, but know that they will be physically or mentally abused in their work environment. For many, it has become part and parcel of their job. Earlier this year, GMB PSAs attended a round table with members of the Scottish Parliament Education Committee. MSP heard straight from our members about the realities of their role. One had to carry a panic alarm, one was hospitalised, and one was physically abused and verbally abused in the work environment that they lost several stones in weight. Many of these pupils need the support, but that is no excuse for the trauma and turmoil our members are experiencing every day. Improving staff numbers will help manage that workload and make it easier for PSAs to take non-contact time. Just like teachers need time to regroup and prepare, so do PSAs. If you go into any kitchen, you will be told that there is not enough people and not enough time to do the work. They are overworked and understaffed. It's the same with cleaning staff. They have to take on the role of people who are on long-term sick. And in all situations, a busy kitchen can be a detrimental environment. There is no silver bullet or quick fix. Solutions have to be found in the schools, in the community, and at home. But work has to be given the resources and the support to do their jobs. At the root of the issue is how much we value school support staff. Their role in the classroom is imperatively important. I request that you actually support this motion. Thank you very much, Congress.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on any other supporting or opposing speakers. Thank you. Lorraine.
President, Congress, Lorraine Thompson Unison, speaking in support of motion 30. Congress, there is no shame in looking for common ground with employers or even governments when we can. It makes life easier for everyone. And when we're talking about schools, that means we're talking about the children we provide education for. And in asking for more funding for schools, that common ground isn't that difficult to find. Everyone, councils, COSLA, even the Scottish Government will agree with us. Absolutely, they'll say, that's what's needed. But when we ask them to come up with the money, we then discover that ground isn't that common at all. Then what happens is that the ground shifts so much that we end up like Wile E. Coyote after he's run off the edge of a cliff. And meanwhile, the employers and the politicians are like Roadrunner, heading into the distance. We need a lot more from the First Minister than fine words, when all that is said and done don't amount to much other than meat. This motion calls for a ratio of support staff to teaching staff that's aimed at defending the quality of education. It's aimed at stopping politicians pretending that the only thing that matters is protecting teacher numbers. It is aimed at making sure that there are policies in place to say that everyone in the education team matters and that the Scottish Government should make sure that the money is there to pay for them. Congress, please support this motion.
Thanks, Lorraine. Are there any other speakers in the debate? Colleague, come forward. Thank you.
Congress, Tam Kirby, Fife Trade Union Council, and I'll stand away for the microphone this year. I was a member of the EIS in 1980 at Lauder Technical College in Fife, and I'm here to talk about the poor relation. If we are talking about quality education in Scotland, why are we not talking about further education colleges? The bulwark, they're there to drag working class people out of poverty. That's their job. And ever since we allowed the underfunding to happen through privatisation and taking it away from local authorities, we have done nothing but watch the demise of further education in Scotland. I visit colleges all over Scotland speaking to construction apprentices, and I have seen the devastation. I have seen the underfunding. And if we're talking about quality education, we are not funding these colleges. We're not funding even the courses. We are running modern apprenticeships on the same budgets that was there 5 years ago. There is no increase, there is only cuts. If we're talking about quality education, please remember further education, because that has been devastated more than any education sector in this country. And it's a sad indictment when apprenticeships in England actually get more funding than they do in Scotland. And we should be ashamed that we've allowed this to happen. Please remember colleges, and please get motions in next year to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any other speakers in the debate? No, thank you. That was amended motion 30, funding quality education in Scotland. Please note, General Council recommends support. I will now take you to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Amended motion 30, funding quality education in Scotland, is carried. I now move to amended motion 31, universities in crisis, save higher education. I invite UCU to move the amended motion. Thank you.
Jo Grady, UCU General Secretary, Chair Conference. It is an absolute honour to be here amongst a trade unionist in Scotland, and it is equally as big an honour to be the voice of thousands of UCU members who need your support, and I know that they will find it here today. Our universities are in crisis, and it is a broken funding model that has brought us here. A system that relies on exploiting students is fueling financial volatility across the sector. A business model that only works by driving staff pay, conditions, and morale into the ground. Universities only function by keeping at least a third of its teaching staff on insecure contracts, and in some institutions it is much higher than that. Staff treated as though they are disposable. And in more recent years, a racist visa regime that has led to a fall in international recruitment and has brought the UK higher education system to the brink. But Congress, what does this look like for our members and other educators on the ground? Pay freezes, job losses, annual severance schemes, currently 10,000 jobs threatened across higher education, and thousands more job losses of hidden redundancies every year of casualised staff. And it also looks like absolutely out of control and overpaid university bosses. Congress, if today you are ready to back UCU members and all those other union members in higher education who have decided enough is enough and they are fighting back, make some noise now. Come on, wake up, Congress. Thank you. Our members are working incredibly hard across the UK and right here in this city to make sure that higher education workers are not the victims of financial mismanagement. Universities are acting like rogue corporations. They are threatening not just students and staff, but the very cities that they call home. And whilst it is true that a broken funding model has led some of our institutions to the brink of collapse, this accounts for no more than a handful of institutions across the entirety of the UK. And yet we see 1 in 2 universities currently making some form of cut. This is bureaucratic cruelty. This is opportunistic. Higher education workers go above and beyond. They are literally carrying the sector. Workers in the higher education sector are doing everything possible to save jobs, but we need our politicians to step up. This motion calls upon the Scottish Government to provide full funding for Scottish higher education, and we are also asking the STUC to continue to support campus trade unions in their actions to defend Scottish universities, and to write to the Minister responsible for higher education, calling upon him to instruct universities to refrain from using compulsory redundancies. Our institutions are failing us, and I'll end soon, don't worry. We as workers are holding them to account, so please support this motion. If you can, we're holding a big demonstration in London on the 10th of May, but Congress, please support, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. And Joe, you're very, very welcome here at STUC 2025. Thank you for your attendance. Can I now call on Aberdeen Trade Union Council to second the amended motion? Thank you.
Thank you, President. Steve Gray, Aberdeen Trade Union Council, second this motion on behalf of the Aberdeen Trade Union Council. And I hope the General Council and the rest of this Scottish Trade Union Congress, President, members, comrades, the previous speaker has pointed out that universities are a fundamental part of both the society, the civic society, and the economy of the cities of Scotland, and that very much applies to Aberdeen, but also the other cities as well. But it's also, it's an investment in the future, and this country suffers if we don't invest in the future. And that's a future for everybody. We've got comrades in the offshore sector who actually got a fresh start thanks to the universities in Aberdeen, and they made fantastic careers in community learning. But again, we're talking about crisis in the public sector. So much of the public sector depends upon university education. So, comrades, please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I now call on any other supporting or opposing speakers in the debate. Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, President. Fred Bear, Co-Chair, Unison Scotland Higher Education. Today, comrades, let's see if trade unionists are better at sums than the Scottish Government. It costs universities £13,000 a year on average to educate each student. The Scottish Government gives universities less than £8,000 per student per year. You don't need a PhD in maths to see that that doesn't add up. The fact that this crisis didn't come much sooner borders on a miracle. The signs were there well before the recent media attention. We've had a 33% real terms pay cut over the past 15 years. Overtime and work-related illness through the roof. Some institutions have seen their student-staff ratios more than double. I could go on and on. Now, we've heard a lot about mismanagement at the University of Dundee, and mismanagement has been a problem at several institutions, but even those that have acted responsibly are now working to plug multi-million-pound black holes left by this chronic underfunding. This crisis is nothing but the predictable outcome of corporatised universities and over a decade of austerity brought to you by the neoliberal consensus of the SNP, Tories, and sadly also Labour. Do we want to fund universities properly so we can stay at the forefront of teaching, research and innovation with all the economic and cultural benefits that brings? Or do we want to stay the course and turn into an academic backwater languishing at the bottom of the global league tables? That is the choice we're faced with, and the largest parties seem to be on board with managed decline. So it's up to us to tell them what we think of their callousness. Comrades, please support this motion.
Thanks, Fred. Any other speakers in the debate? Come forward, delegate. Come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, President. I'm Damien Stanchev from the Education Institute of Scotland. Delegation, second time attendee, first time speaker. I strongly support motion 31 and our colleagues from UCU who are passing this motion. Solidarity with them. I support this motion because academia, as has traditionally been known, is changing beyond recognition, and we believe it is for the worse. Academia has never been seen as a business that is chasing profits, but as a vocation, an honorable profession, spreading knowledge, enlightening society. Academia is in crisis and is nowadays notorious for excessive workloads, for poor mental health, work-life balance, but also for bad and often controversial investment decisions by universities. We are so well aware of the amount of money principals are paid in comparison with other employees, aren't we? The ever so much widening gap between staff and management is becoming more and more obvious. Although universities are registered as charities, they are not acting as such. Therefore, we should be campaigning for a change of business models by which universities are run and for academics to have a larger say, driven by pedagogics and research and not profits. So please support this motion.
Thank you, Delegate. No further speakers in the debate. That was amended motion 31, Universities in Crisis, Save Our Higher Education. Please note that the General Council recommends support. I'll now move you to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Amended motion 31, Universities in Crisis, Save Our Higher Education is carried. I now call on motion 32, University of Dundee Governance. I invite Dundee Trade Union Council to move the motion. Thank you.
President, Congress, Gary Hunter, Dundee Trades Union Council, moving motion 32, University of Dundee Governance. First time delegate, first time speaker. A little bit terrified. As our motion makes clear, we are concerned with the ongoing debacle at the University of Dundee. Huge and spiralling debts appearing seemingly out of nowhere. Key figures in governance leaving, some in a decidedly rat-like fashion, others before they were pushed. Overwhelming discontent from staff, whose unions were absolutely sidelined for most of the process thus far. All campus unions have obtained resounding strike mandates to fight staff cuts, and the atmosphere on campus is poisonous. Investigations have been launched, but they were painfully slow to start, and huge swathes of time have been wasted. The financial environment and UK immigration issues have been highlighted, but catastrophic management is increasingly looking like the major issue. Congress calls for the University of Dundee to work more closely with its staff trade unions in all areas to address these issues. Calls for the Scottish Government to see through the investigation and address all the issues of governance raised here, and to impose fair work principles on publicly funded organisations. Calls for support for the workplace unions in their responses to these issues. This is personal for me as a proud Dundonian, fighting for the uni where I earned my degree, where after years of working in service jobs as a young father, I finally found a role where I could flourish. I joined 23 years ago as a junior technician in life sciences and have since been promoted 4 times. I have moved from council tenancy in a flat in Whitfield to home ownership. I've developed skills which academics consult from here to Australia and given back as I can. I've been a community councillor, a Rotarian, a volunteer for a geriatric charity, and this beard comes in handy for being Santa Claus for local causes. I would not be who I am without my uni, and my city would suffer without it too. Each of the 600-odd threatened FTE roles belongs to someone who brought passion, enthusiasm and a myriad of different attributes to our uni, and who take that quality employment and security and bring benefits to this city. This current crisis is a colossal threat. Dundee still bears the scars from Timex, from NCR, the death of Jute, the shrinking of jam and journalism. For 6 months, we have worked in an atmosphere of dread, with any colleague who can easily be let go slipping away in every area of campus, regardless of their abilities, performance, or their necessity. We are being bled dry. Hundreds of us have gone already, and attrition continues apace. Mental health at the uni is a crisis. Damage being done right now to blameless colleagues is catastrophic, and the repercussions will be felt for years. Students are also suffering. Uncertainty is a heavy burden, and the excruciating duration of this situation has added unnecessary stress to shoulders and minds when it should be focused on their development and just having fun. The executive group may have shrunk, but none have been held accountable yet, and the departed have all chosen to leave.
Many former colleagues would have loved that choice. We need to regroup, and we ask for your support in the rebuilding of our reputation. There is no shortage of deserving causes for your attention, but I would like to ask for confidence and support for my university, where my daughter also works, and for my city, which has suffered enough. Please support this motion I move. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on the EIS to second the motion.
Morning, Congress. Grant Butchers, UCU, and also a Dundee Uni graduate seconding motion 32. Before I begin, I want to send a message of solidarity to UCU staff in Unite who are on strike today and call for a swift resolution to that dispute that's been going on for far too long. I want to start with some words from Dundee UCU from a statement of theirs that was issued last December, just after this £30 million deficit was announced out of nowhere. Dundee University has a problem hanging on to its principles. The fact that the second in 5 years has unceremonially resigned with immediate effect shortly after announcing a funding crisis raises serious questions about how this university is being run. The university has recently lost not just its principal, but also its finance director and its vice principal for internationalisation. The university executive group has failed to provide any explanation for this sudden turn of events. Yesterday, Stuart Fairweather rightly called out Dundee Uni as a rogue employer. It has been a rogue employer in 2021 and it remains so today. Talking to Dundee UCU comrades yesterday, it's clear that their bosses still have no plan and are failing to meet their responsibilities by a wide margin. A university is its people, for teaching, learning and research to be delivered and for the university to be a vibrant part of and contributor to the community, that all require staff. Individually and collectively, staff are the bedrock on which everything else is built. To callously threaten 700 of them with redundancy is an absolute outrage, and one which the campus trade unions are resisting and will continue to resist against this rogue employer. That resistance requires our full support. We need to be in a position where, alongside the task force, campus unions can take whatever action they deem necessary as soon as they deem it necessary. Please support. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call for any other supporting or opposing speaker. Maggie, thank you.
President, Congress, Maggie Maguire, Unison Scotland, and also a proud Dundonian, speaking in support of motion 32. Higher education across Scotland and throughout the UK is going through extremely difficult times. Across various institutions from Cardiff to Aberdeen, we are seeing jobs being lost and the sector shrinking year on year. There are many reasons being given for the problems: falling recruitment of international students due to government policy, increased costs due to inflation and inadequate funding from both Holyrood and Westminster. But the situation of the University of Dundee is unique. Make no mistake, the future of the university is at risk. An external investigation into the causes of the crisis is ongoing. We can expect to hear about poor planning, a reckless culture of spending with poor cost controls, inadequate leadership, failed IT projects, the usual litany of problems. Most of the senior management have already left the university, leaving whoever remains to clear up the mess with outside support. But we already know who is not to blame and who are the biggest victims of this crisis: the ordinary workers at the university, members of Unison, Unite and the UCU. They are being expected to carry the can for this disaster, but as unions we have rallied to support them. The most recent plans combined a recruitment freeze and potential compulsory redundancy, which would mean cutting the workforce in total by nearly a third, nearly enough 1,000 jobs gone in this city, with the economic impacts felt quickly elsewhere. A combination of strike action, negotiation and engagement with politicians means that the current plans are currently paused, but workers will continue to suffer the stress of not knowing. I had a lot more to say, but I didn't realise it was only 2 minutes. So please send a strong message of support and solidarity to these heroes who are giving their all for the benefit of their colleagues in the whole city. Thank you.
Thanks, Maggie. Speaker in debate, come forward. Thank you.
Morning, Christina Fleming, EIS, supporting the motion. I'm someone who lives and works in Dundee, and I'm also a graduate from the uni, so that's why I would really like to support this. I wanted to pick up on one of the Fair Work principles around effective voice. In theory, this means that where you work should be a safe environment, and unions should be there to engage in dialogue and challenge where necessary. This principle of effective voice underpins all of the other dimensions of the Fair Work principles. So far, Dundee Uni are not acknowledging the legitimacy of employee voice through trade unions and other collective voice. I think it's really important to note that trade unions have fought long and hard over many years for this worker voice, and this can be used to resolve the conflicts and to engage constructively in their workplace. So this is something that needs to happen. So I would like to just finish off by saying that I want Dundee Uni management to recognise the importance of working collectively with trade unions to address the current crisis and stop the potential job losses throughout the city. Thank you. Please support.
Thank you, Delegate. Any other speakers in the debate? No further speakers in the debate, colleagues. That was motion 32, University of Dundee Governance. Please note the General Council recommends support. I will now move you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion 32, University of Dundee Governance is carried. I now call amended motion 33, work shouldn't hurt protecting the health and safety and well-being of school staff, and I invite EIS to move the motion. Thank you.
Morning, President, colleagues. Paula McEwen, EIS. The first three words in the title of this motion say it all. Work shouldn't hurt. I quite unbelievably stand here asking that educational environments be made safe. Places where all staff and pupils are and feel safe, respected and supported in order that they thrive. So to be clear, work shouldn't hurt us physically. Work shouldn't hurt us emotionally. It shouldn't hurt us through physical or verbal abuse. It shouldn't hurt us face-to-face, online or on the phone. Work shouldn't hurt us because of a belief system, our colour, our sexuality, our disability or our gender. And our governments and beyond recognise that violence and aggression in work is an issue. The UK government has ratified the ILO Treaty C190. It recognises everyone's right to a workplace free from violence and harassment, and that includes gender-based violence and harassment. To date, 49 other countries have signed up to that, and a further 10 will have it enforced by the end of 2025. The Scottish Government has acknowledged the issue. It published a framework to tackle gender-based violence in schools. It sits within Equally Safe, the national strategy to prevent and eradicate violence against women and girls. A clear recognition that this is a societal issue playing out in our education workplaces. It needs to be addressed. The EIS is Scotland's largest teacher trade union. We have almost 65,000 members. Around 80% of our membership is female and so are more likely to be exposed to workplace aggression. Our Stand Up for Quality Education campaign launched in 2023, and it started with a survey on pupil behaviour. 82% of our branches are dealing with incidents of violence and aggression in their workplaces on a daily or weekly basis. 51% of our branches reported that boys were more likely to exhibit violent and aggressive behaviour towards women teachers than men. Further recognition of the issue came with the publication of the Scottish Government's Behaviour in Scottish Schools report. It mirrored many of our own findings. And as a result of that, the Cabinet Secretary convened behaviour summits. In 2024, the Behaviour in Relationships in Schools Action Plan was published, a 3-year, 20-point plan to address violence and aggression in schools. Great, you might think, but it came with no additional resource. So school staff are tasked with tackling the recognised issue of violence and aggression in their workplace within existing budgets, within existing staffing, and within existing already overstretched capacity. The final paragraph of this motion is key and builds on the call already heard in motion 30. Despite the First Minister not mentioning education at all yesterday, we are calling for specific funding to be made available to tackle violence and aggression in our educational establishments. Our members must be safe at work, and they must be safe in calling for action when appropriate measures to keep them safe are not in place. Colleagues, work shouldn't hurt us. Please support the motion.
Thank you, Delegate. Can I now call on NASUWT to second the amended motion? Thank you, Delegate.
Hi, Congress, comrades. Carol Wood, NASUWT, supporting the amended motion 33. I'm not sure whether to start with our survey or the head teacher who was beaten so badly by a parent who was called in to talk about his son's behaviour, ended up in hospital for a year and took another year to recover mentally. Or our survey. So let's go with the survey. Here we are. In the last 12 months, the NASUWT survey showed 44% of respondents disclosed that they'd experienced physical or violent abuse from pupils, and 90% of our respondents verbal abuse. Some of the physical abuse was with the threat of or the use of a weapon. One of the schools where I work has got a permanent police presence patrolling the school area to make sure that there are no violent incidents within or without the school. One of our teachers shared that they'd had a firework thrown at them. The list goes on. We are deeply concerned about the lack of management and government input into the safety and well-being of teaching staff, support staff, janitorial staff, canteen staff and cleaners in our schools. We do not go to work to be beaten up or threatened. Nobody does. As a health and safety rep for over 40 years, I experienced less violence and aggression working in prisons and on the street with drug addicts than I actually experience in schools. I urge you all to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on any other supporting or opposing speakers in the debate. Lorraine, thank you.
President, Congress, Lorraine Thompson speaking in support of motion 33. Congress, that no one should be assaulted at work is a point so obvious we shouldn't have to make it. Sadly, though, the reality of our members' working lives is such that not only do we have to say it, we have to make it a major campaigning point. Unison Scotland conducts an annual survey of violence at work across Scotland's public services. Last year's survey recorded over 40,000 incidents against staff in schools. 77% of those incidents were against school staff and support staff, and they appear to be the majority that are being affected. Congress, we have to say that in itself this tells us a lot about how seriously or not it is in this case that councils are taking this problem, and indeed how they're putting supports in place for our members. This motion outlines a range of measures. Many of them already exist in some places, but they need to become standard everywhere. Putting them in place won't eradicate violence in schools, but they will mean that when incidents occur, that they are properly dealt with, analysed, and lessons are learnt from them. They represent the very least that staff in our schools should expect, because violence at work shouldn't be part of the job.
Thanks, Lorraine. Come forward, Delegate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Claire Robertson, Edinburgh Trade Union Council, speaking in support of motion 33. In my school, every single teacher, PSA and senior leader has experienced violence and aggression from our students. High levels of verbal abuse and misogyny are ever present issue, which my colleagues are becoming numb to. We're having to be more vigilant for physical attacks between pupils and are on constant alert for being physically assaulted. When my colleague's hand was broken by a pupil, there was no one from our senior leadership team to attend to her for 45 minutes. And it was that lack of support for her that did the greatest damage to her confidence as a teacher and her belief that she was safe at work. If the Scottish education system was funded properly, we would have far smaller class sizes. Our pupils with additional support needs would receive tailored programmes of work which would help them to thrive, and our teachers would be valued and supported to stay in our profession. We heard nothing from John Swinney about school education yesterday. We feel alone in trying to tackle many of society's problems within our schools, including gang culture and county lines. So please support this motion to demonstrate to school staff that they aren't alone in trying to get it right for Scotland's children and in turn for all those who work in Scotland's schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Any other speakers in the debate? Come forward, Bill. Thank you.
Bill Ramsey, South Lanarkshire Trade Union Council and part of the Unions into Schools programme. And as a former president of the EIS and LA secretary, it's interesting taking 5 or 10 minutes talking to staff in all sorts of different settings when I've talked to the young people. And a couple of years ago, I was in a school and the carnage in Gaza had been taking place, and I was asking a deputy head who was a modern studies teacher how that was playing out in terms of social media. And the deputy said, no, Bill, you've got it all wrong. You've got it all wrong. The threat in social media, that's an issue, of course, but the threat in social media is Andrew Tate. And I finished as an LA secretary in 18, became a senior office bearer, and there has been a sea change in terms of the violence and culture in schools. I'll not go into the local authority I was LA secretary in, but there were areas where there were big issues and areas where there was less issues in relation to violence. This is uniform right across the authority. We are in a new context, a really difficult context, to support the motion.
Thanks, Bill. No further speakers in the debate. That was amended motion 33, what shouldn't hurt, protecting the health, safety and well-being of school staff. Please note that the General Council recommends support. I'll now move you to the vote. Can I see all those in favour please show? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Amended motion 33, what shouldn't hurt, protecting the health, safety and well-being of school staff is carried. I now call on amended motion 34, workload and well-being, and I invite the NASUWT to move the amended motion. Thank you, colleague.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Afifa Khanum. I'm representing NASUWT. I'm also a teacher who's been teaching for a long, long time. Conference President, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm very proud of who I am. You know, teachers create the future. You wouldn't be sitting here without a teacher. A teacher taught you how to read, write, listen, communicate. You could be a prime minister, you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you could be anything or everything you want to be. However, we used to be respected. We used to be accepted, we used to be valued, and we used to be nurtured. But nowadays, what happens is we are seen as a number. No, we don't matter anymore. You know why? Because you're getting paid for the job. That's it. But no, we do more than that. Do you think about the workload we have? You know, most people go home, they can look after their children, they can do things, they can go out for a meal, but we can't. We have to do the marking, we have to do the assessment, we have to create the next lesson, we have to make sure, how do we look after our children in the class? Because I remember going into teaching 37 years ago, you know, thinking, I love this job, I really wanted to do this job. I did not have much pressure as I do now. Because I go into the classroom now, I maybe have a mixed ability class where I may have 30 kids where 12, 13 of them maybe have ADHD or dyslexic or behavioral issues. I've got to think about needs of every single child, not just everyone, but I have to think about the ability child. I've got to think about the people who can't read and write. You've got to think about who can't behave. Nobody thinks about that. Luckily, I've gone through a bit of management. I've been a guidance teacher, I've been a principal teacher, I've been a deputy head teacher. But do you know something? Doesn't matter how far you go, your workload doesn't decrease. You spend most of the time doing the job where we should be doing. That's our job. Some of us are born, some of us are made. But we do our job very passionately. But we need help from our government, our councils, our schools, to do the job we can do well. Trust us, believe in us, and help us. And give us the respect we deserve. Because we can't create the future if you don't help us, guys. I know First Minister talked about so many different things yesterday, but did he talk about even once about education? No, he didn't. Did he talk about the teachers' workload? Never. Did he talk about all the behavior issues we're having in the classroom? He never. Did he talk about the way we are treated in the street, way we are treated, outside in the community? He never. But we create the future, guys. So please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on the EIS to second the amended motion. Thanks, Delegate.
President, colleagues, Adam Sutcliffe, EIS, supporting amended motion 34. Despite it not even being alluded to in the First Minister's speech yesterday, urgent measures must be taken to address excessive workload and the devastating effect this is having on Scotland's teachers. The EIS's Stand Up for Quality Education campaign has 3 strands of activity: violence and aggression, workload and additional support needs. These are not separate. They intertwine with each other, consistently and perniciously affecting the working lives of Scotland's teachers. In June 24, the EIS published an independent research on teacher workload in Scotland, and its findings were stark. The research showed that Scotland's teachers are working an average of 11 hours beyond their 35-hour working week. They're spending 4 hours of their weekend on work-related activity. Much of this extra time is being spent on preparation and correction, which they don't have time to do at their place of work. Our research highlighted the effects this overwork culture is having on the workforce. Work beyond contracted hours is the strongest predictor of stress. The workload burden is leaving teachers stressed within all aspects of their lives, not just work. Our research revealed a correlation between the hours worked and happiness. You won't be surprised to learn that those that spend more hours working in the evenings and at weekends report lower levels of job satisfaction. The professionalism of teachers, their willingness to go the extra mile by extending their working hours for free, is having a deleterious effect on their health, well-being and family life. In Scottish schools, we need more teachers. The SNP promised 3,500 more teachers. They failed. They promised to reduce class contact time. They failed. Education is a bedrock of society, yet still funding is being slashed. We keep being told there's only so much of the pie to go around. Well, I say stuff that, make a bigger pie. Tax unearned wealth, tax the landowners, make companies that ply their trade here pay their full burden of tax, chase and punish tax evaders, fund public services and stand up for quality education. I move.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call on any other supporting or opposing speaker in the debate. Lorraine, thank you.
President Congress, Lorraine Thompson, Unison, speaking in support of motion 34. Congress, this is a motion about teachers, about the difficulties they face, about the workload they have and how they are undervalued and underappreciated. And all of that is certainly the case, and we absolutely support this motion. However, we aren't a teaching union. We are one of the largest education unions. Our members work supporting pupils in classrooms and early years centres the length and breadth of Scotland, and we are well aware that tackling the issues facing teachers doesn't only involve teachers, it also involves the recognition of the role of the pupil support workers. There aren't any guarantees about maintaining numbers of pupil support assistants, And we have seen time and time again when councils are looking to save money, it's their numbers that have taken the hit. This motion calls on the movement to lobby government to secure funding commitments to education and public services. That's obviously something that we should be doing. But while we're making that case, we should remember that the most effective way of making life better for teachers and making Scottish education what it should be involves acknowledging that education is delivered by a team, and taking all of that team into account needs to have the case made for them.
Thanks, Lorraine. Any other speakers in the debate? That was amended motion 34, workload and wellbeing. Please note the General Council recommends support. I'll now move you to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Amended motion 34, workload and wellbeing, is carried. Congress, I now call motion 35, greater support and safety for early years staff. Please note that amendment has been submitted to this motion but has not been agreed by the mover. We will debate and vote on both separately. Can I invite community to move the motion? Thank you, Delegate.
Good morning, Conference. Caroline MacDonald, Community Education in Early Years. First time speaker, first time delegate, moving motion 35. It's an honour to stand here today among dedicated advocates and defenders of workers' rights. Our trade unions have always supported solidarity, justice and fairness. Today I'm here to spotlight a group whose importance to society cannot be overstated: early years workers. Early years workers are the backbone of our children's education, safety and growth. They guide young minds, nurture potential and provide a haven for learning and development. Yet, despite these critical roles, these workers often face challenging conditions that compromise their safety, well-being and ability to thrive in their vital work. Violence and aggression in Scottish schools is on the rise. An increase in frequency, the level of violence, it's not just happening in schools, it's starting far earlier in early years, and staff are not being supported. A lack of coherent data, a downplaying of the severity of the effects of violence from the wee ones, and a lack of clarity in how to access support or counselling are affecting all of our staff. Council policies often only cover mainstream school-age settings. Many education early years settings are independent partner providers with no such policies. If we know violence in primary schools is underreported, why would we expect violence in early years to be any different? Because the violence was carried out or impacted on by a younger person. Together, as an organisation, we can campaign, lobby and push policymakers to take action. Together, we can amplify the voices of early years workers and ensure they're heard. We recently launched an early years charter, and we ask you to help us take this further. The Scottish Government has emphasised the importance of early intervention and support for children and families to address such issues. Initiatives like the Early Years Framework aim to tackle the root causes of inequality and provide nurturing environments. Let's make them honour this progressive vision with progressive action. Support our highly trained staff. Remember, the strength of a society lies in its investment in the people who shape the future. Early years workers inspire, guide and protect. And by standing with them, we provide a brighter future for all. Let's make this commitment here and now to tackle this real health and safety issue. For the safety, dignity and well-being of all early years officers, the future of our children and the future of our society. Let's keep these workers safe. Help us to gather the data to monitor the situation more effectively. Let us enforce the modified systems reporting and ensure that adequate support after an attack is offered to all as standard practice, regardless of position or union, and stop living in the past where earlier staff have been so undervalued. Conference, please support this motion as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. I now call for a seconder of the motion. Formally, Thank you. I now call on Unison to move the amendment to motion 35.
President Congress, Lorraine Thompson, moving the amendment for motion 35. Congress, we're moving this amendment to make a good motion better, to add another practical option that will help protect early years staff deal with the violent incidents. In November last year, Unison Scotland produced their guide to debriefing after a violent incident, and it's important that any worker who has been subject to a violent incident has a debriefing. Our guide provides a template that can be used by reps to not just only help members, but to also check that employers' processes are robust enough. It outlines the key points that ought to be covered at the time and then what follow-up actions should be taken later. The guide includes what issues ought to be covered in so-called hot and cold debriefings. The questions need to be asked of the member from the employer and indeed the young person involved. It's been produced by our Education Issues Group and it's on the Unison Scotland website. We recommend it as a way of helping to protect and assist members working in schools. It isn't a silver bullet or a magic wand that will solve the issues around violence in early years, but it does provide a method not just of helping our members at the time, but also of getting violent incidents taken seriously, allowing for the possibility of lessons being learned and the future incidents being avoided. Congress, I move.
Thank you, Lorraine. I now call for a seconder on the amendment. Formally, thank you. I now call on any other supporting or opposing speakers in the debate. I now ask the mover of the substantive motion if they wish to exercise the right of reply. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, colleague.
President Congress, Mark Fleming, EIS. One of the roles of people, all of us involved in education, is to prepare the children for the next stage of their life, early years into primary, into secondary, etc. We need to get it sorted out at the very beginning because these problems are carrying on into primary, into secondary. You've heard the last few motions, what's going on in education establishments at the moment. If we don't do something about it just now, the rest of you, it's coming to you. You must support this motion.
Thank you, Delegate. Any other speakers in the debate? Come forward, please.
Chair, Conference Claire Sweeney from the Disabled Workers Committee. My old job used to be early years. It's my favourite job. I loved it. It's really changed since I left 10 years ago. When we were all training, we were encouraged to get a degree qualification, which a lot of the staff are. It was mentioned that staff are extremely skilled. So despite having what would be considered a professional staff, early years workers still don't get anywhere near the respect and the recognition that they deserve. And I think that is massively part of the problem. Another part of the problem is that we increased the hours, which is great, it's wonderful, and as a working parent, that would have been a joy for me when I was juggling childcare. But what we've not done is look at the increased levels of kind of diagnosis for additional support needs. We've done nothing to address the needs of them children or the awareness of the parents who have just got this diagnosis, if they're lucky to get a diagnosis, and they've just been left to it, so they don't know how to manage their child's behaviour. A child's going into an environment which absolutely does not meet their needs at all, and they're being left to flounder. Staff are not getting the support that they deserve because support staff have been taken away because of budget cut upon budget cut upon budget cut, and it's just created this absolute awful situation. We need to do more to protect our early year staff, but recognise them for the the fantastic work that they do, but obviously the incredible skill set that they've got. I think more than that, we need to act on making sure that supports are in place for any child with additional support needs or disability, because we are failing them, and by doing that we're absolutely failing our early years staff. Supporting this motion.
Thank you, Delegate. If there's no other speakers in the debate, I'm going to ask the mover of the substantive motion if they want to exercise their right of reply. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you very much. So, the reason that I'm taking the right to reply is the phrasing of one tiny part of the amendment, because while I believe that the Unison Guide, if I've not particularly had access to it because I'm not a Unison member, but I am a teacher who teaches from early years right up to S2. I get the best of all worlds. And I just felt that that amendment with that line about the Unison Scotland Guide and how that's what should be followed was too specific. Some early years workers, many are in Unison, some are in community, but we've also got a lot of EIS members in peripatetic nursery teaching. Nearly every peripatetic nursery teacher in Fife is within the EIS, and I would want them to follow whatever guidance is coming from their own union until we, as a collective union body, can put together something through SNCT where we get that guidance for all staff that is not as narrow as this, which is why I would say please vote for the substantive motion, which covers all unions and all members of the early years workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. I'm now going to move to voting on the amendment. So we are voting now solely on the amendment. Please note that the General Council recommends that you support the amendment. Can I see all of those in favour? Please show. Thank you. Against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Amendment 35, greater support and safety for early years, is carried. Colleagues, I'm now moving to the vote on the amended motion. Can I see all those in favour of the amended motion? Please show. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Amended motion 35, greater support and safety for early years staff, is carried. Thank you, Congress. Congress, I now call on motion 37, addressing the shortage in training places in pharmacy students. Can I invite the PDA union to move the motion? Thank you.
Good morning, President, Congress. I'm Lola Dabiri, pharmacist, Pharmacist Defence Association, first-time delegate, first-time speaker. I'm moving motion 37. Congress, medicines are the backbone of excellent healthcare outcomes, and pharmacists are the experts in medicines. To earn that role, each of us goes through years of rigorous academic study at university, followed by a vital supervised year of practical training, known as the foundation year. This journey equips us not just with knowledge, but with the competence and the confidence to serve patients across Scotland and everywhere. Final year pharmacy students have recently been informed of severe cuts to the number of available training places. This year, there are 220 places, whilst last year there were 277 places, meaning there is a loss of 57 places. This currently is roughly a 25% loss. That means scores of graduates after 4 intense years of study will not be able to complete their training in Scotland. Their dreams are being put on pause. Who would do a pharmacy course and expect not to finish? We have heard from these students. They are devastated. Their anxiety levels have spiked right at the time when they should be preparing for final exams. If they can't access the foundation year, then they cannot register as pharmacists, and their dreams and their future will be put on pause. But the situation gets worse. At the same time that the number of training posts are being cut, we are also seeing an increase of up to 40% in pharmacy school admissions in England. Universities sees pharmacy students as the proverbial cash cow. They are creating graduates whilst the number of training places they need to become registered pharmacists is shrinking. This is alarming. We are creating more graduates while cutting the very training they need to become registered pharmacists. The Scottish taxpayer has funded their education, and now they must leave Scotland to complete their training. That is not only unfair to them, but damaging to the future of healthcare in Scotland and great for the healthcare of the country they moved to. Congress, I ask you, is this the future we want for Scotland's healthcare? As a pharmacist who has practiced for over 2 decades in multiple sectors and who has held the privilege of mentoring others, I speak on behalf of pharmacists who already feel the pressure of inadequate numbers, and on behalf of students, past, present, and future. I stand here today for all of them. The story of our students, some of them and all of them, they choose pharmacy with care. They knew it would be hard. They've committed to the journey because the